What makes this opening gambit more scarier is you already dominate the game in 9 moves. Yes, you hear it right, 9 moves. This gambit starts from the 4 knights game. The e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3 the 3 knights, then knight f6 the 4 knights game. Then here comes the scary and very aggressive knight sacrifice on e5, the Halloween gambit. A knight with exchange of a pawn. This gambit is advantage of this part, but we can turn this into our side in few moves. Here's how. Push d4 to attack the knight and start to control the center. They have 2 options here, go on c6 or g6. Let's analyze the c6 first, attack it again with pawn, but still they have 2 suitable options, e5 or b8. If they go e5, attack it with pawn again on f4, you already have 3 central pawn and already dominating the center. Black has no other options to move, which is g6. Still, attack the knight, with only 1 options to move. Push the central pawn again, takes. Queen f6 black's best move with idea of attacking 2 pawns. Don't be afraid because we have counter of knight b5 with the idea of going c7 for having a fork. If they defend it by moving king on d7, then move bishop e3 attacking a7 pawn. If they move it on a6 to avoid be taken, while attacking our knight, which is a blunder, then we can go on bishop e6 check. King e8 is the only option to move. Here comes the check and fork. Check. And check and fork. This is already winning, but in continuation, they can take with pawn or a knight, it doesn't matter, but taking with knight is much better, in order also to develop. Then follow with check using queen. King can't be moved, that's why it is forced to cover using knight or bishop. If they cover with knight, don't take it directly with the pawn, instead castle first to develop and ready for attack because opponent's knight is still hanging. So, if they defend it with bishop in order also to ready for castle, since it is defended with knight we need to attack it with pawn in order to easily checkmate the opponent. Let's go back in this position. What if the opponent chooses to back on b8 instead on e5? Then still push the central pawn and attack their knight. No other best option to move, only to back on g8. You already dominating the center even if you lost the knight earlier. Then push d6 with the same purpose, to dominate. If they decline to take your pawn like they're developing their knight, then go on knight b5, same purpose earlier to attack c7 pawn and to fork king and rook. And if they decided now to take the pawn, then we just take back with our pawn, and opening the e-file to have additional attack for the opponent. We are already controlling the board. And what if they take directly your d6 pawn? Then it directly opening the e-file, it is an early attack of queen check. They force to cover knight or bishop. If they cover with knight, don't take it directly with pawn cause there is much better attack with the same concept earlier, which is knight b5. If they avoid a pin like moving the rook in b8, then it's losing of their queen. So, if they cover with bishop instead of knight thinking they can have a space to move, don't go your knight on b5, instead develop your bishop and defending your pawn d6. If they attack your queen, then have an exchange of pieces, since your pieces is already developed and the opponent is still in stock. Let's go back in this position. If they defend it using this other knight, then we still continue with our plan on knight b5. If they are opening f5 in order to have an escape for the king, then we can just go queen c4 to block it. So let's go back in this position. What if they're trying to pin instead of backing out knight on g8? Then we just simply defend with our queen. They still force their knight to go back. We can now go our knight on b8. They might be thinking that they need to block d6 in order also to defend c7, but we can still take c7 with intention of fork. If they take it with queen, then they lose their queen. And if they don't take your knight, then they lost their room as well. That's it.